There are moments in life when God starts removing what you thought you needed. And at first it feels like loss, like rejection, like the ground beneath you just opened up. But hear me, what walked out wasn't a collapse. It was a clearing. What disappeared wasn't a punishment. It was preparation. Because God will never take something from you without having something greater on the way. And I came to tell somebody tonight, what left your life was never meant to stay. God is rebuilding you stronger. When God begins to remove something from your life, it rarely feels like a divine strategy. It feels like loss. It feels like confusion. It feels like you're being stripped, weakened, or left behind. But what you don't see in the moment is that God is not subtracting. He's stabilizing. He's clearing out what cannot carry the weight of where He's taken you. You are moving into a season that requires a different foundation, a different capacity, a different level of strength, and the things, people, and habits that once fit your life can no longer support the calling that is growing inside you. Elevation always demands elimination. Every time God is preparing to lift you, He starts by removing what would collapse under the pressure of your next level. And because God loves you too much to let your destiny fall apart, He will take away what you would have tried to hold on to. Sometimes we mistake attachment for alignment. We hold on to people because they're familiar, not because they're fruitful. We hold on to relationships because they're comfortable, not because they're covenant. We cling to old patterns, old environments, old mindsets, thinking they're essential for our survival, when in reality they're suffocating the very growth God is trying to produce in us. Some people were good for where you were, but they're not built for where you're going. Some relationships could handle the weight of your past, but not the magnitude of your future. And God, in His wisdom, will begin to shift, shake, and sift, not because He's punishing you, but because He's protecting His purpose in you. You might not understand why things suddenly fell apart. You might not understand why someone walked away without explanation. You might not understand why the job ended, why the friendship faded, why the opportunity closed. But what you do not see is that God observed what you couldn't. He saw the cracks in the foundation before you noticed the shaking. He saw the instability before you felt the collapse. He saw that the weight of your destiny, your assignment, your future influence, your breakthrough was too heavy to be supported by weak structures and fragile connections. So He stepped in and then removed what would have failed you later, because it's better for God to remove something early than for your whole purpose to collapse under the strain of what was never meant to uphold it. You may be grieving something God has already replaced in the spirit. You may be crying over what God has already judged incapable of carrying you forward. You may be trying to resurrect something God has already declared expired. You keep wondering why it left, but God is saying, it wasn't strong enough for where I'm taking you. You keep asking why it ended, but God knows that if it had stayed, you wouldn't have made it to the next level. You keep questioning what you did wrong, but it was never about your failure. It was about your future. When God removes something, it's not rejection, it's reinforcement. He's fortifying your life for the next dimension of your calling. Think about a rocket. When it rises, it releases parts. Those sections are not bad. They serve their purpose. But they cannot ascend with the rocket into higher atmospheres because they weren't built for that level of altitude, pressure, and velocity. You are rising, you are elevating. You are being prepared for a heavier glory, a greater assignment, a deeper purpose. And anything that cannot breathe in the atmosphere of your destiny cannot accompany you. So God releases them from your life at the exact moment your elevation begins. What left you wasn't a loss, it was a launch sequence. Something had to fall away for you to rise. When God takes something away, it's often because you would have never let it go on your own. You loved it too much, needed it too deeply, depended on it too strongly. But God intends for you to depend on Him at this level. He intends for you to grow into the strength He placed inside you, not the strength you borrowed from others. You were leaning on props that would have broken under the pressure of your promise. You were connected to support systems that looked stable but were never designed to carry your destiny. And because you couldn't see their limits, God had to remove them Himself. Yes, it hurts. Yes, it's confusing. Yes, it feels unfair. But there will come a day when you look back and realize that what you thought was breaking you was actually building you. You will look back and see that the relationship that ended saved your future. The job you lost opened the door to your purpose. The friends who walked away freed you from people who would have betrayed your destiny. The disappointment that crushed you positioned you for the breakthrough that would redefine you. God is not removing to destroy. He's removing to prepare. He's upgrading your foundation because the way to glory that's coming requires a stronger structure than the one you had. And hear this clearly, nothing God removes is ever necessary for your future. If it was essential, it would have stayed. If it was covenant, it would not have broken. If it was aligned, it would have endured. What left was seasonal. What stayed is structural. What's coming is supernatural. You are not being weakened. God is reinforcing you. You are not being abandoned. God is advancing you. You are not being emptied. God is making room for what is greater, heavier, stronger, and more aligned with His purpose for your life. So stop mourning what God removed. Stop rehearsing what God has released. Stop chasing what God has closed. You are stepping into a season that demands strength, stability, maturity, and clarity, and God is surrounding you with everything that can handle the weight of where you're going. Trust the removal, trust the shaking, trust the separation, because God didn't take it away to hurt you. He took it away because it could not hold the weight of who you are becoming, and what God is building in you requires a foundation that cannot be shaken, cannot be broken, and cannot be carried by anything that was never meant to stay. There are seasons in your life when everything feels like it's breaking at the same time. The friendships you trusted begin to fracture. The opportunities you were counting on fall apart. The plans you carefully laid out collapse in front of you, and the dreams you nurtured begin to fade. In those moments, you don't feel strong. You don't feel chosen. You don't feel blessed, you feel broken. But what you must understand is that God often builds by breaking. When He is preparing to elevate you, He does not start with the finished product. He starts by tearing down what can't hold the future He's placing in your hands. Your breaking season is not a burial, it's a blueprint, it's not an ending, it's an excavation. God is not attacking your life. He's rearranging it, restructuring it, and rebuilding it at a level you have not yet imagined. Breaking is uncomfortable because it interrupts the rhythm you're used to. We all love stability. We love familiar routines, familiar people, familiar comfort zones. But there comes a moment when God looks at your life and says, you've outgrown this stage. You've outgrown this environment. You've outgrown these patterns. And when you don't move voluntarily, He will begin to apply pressure, not to punish you, but to transition you, not to hurt you, but to shift you. Breaking is the language God uses when He's about to birth transformation. Before He multiplies, He breaks. Before He promotes, He breaks. Before He reveals destiny, He breaks. Every breakthrough is preceded by a breaking. Think about the way a seed functions. Before it becomes a tree, it must first be broken beneath the soil. The shell cracks open, and the world of that seed is shattered. If the seed could speak, it might say, my life is falling apart. Everything I knew is breaking. But what looks like destruction is actually expansion. What seems like an ending is the beginning of roots forming, strength developing, identity awakening. The seed doesn't know that inside its breaking is the blueprint for a harvest. In the same way, you don't always see what God is doing beneath the surface when your life feels like it's cracking open. You see the pain, but not the preparation. You feel the pressure, but not the promise. You notice what's falling apart, but not what's being formed. Sometimes God will allow a relationship to break because it was limiting your spiritual growth. Sometimes He will allow a job to break because you were settling for security instead of stepping into purpose. Sometimes He will let your confidence break because your identity was rooted in the wrong thing. He breaks the false to reveal the real. He breaks the temporary to reveal the eternal. He breaks what was built on sand so He can rebuild on stone. God loves you too much to let you stay attached to what cannot carry you forward. So when He sees something in your life that is too small for your calling, He applies pressure until it breaks. Breaking seasons expose what was weak, but they also reveal what was strong. You never truly know the strength God placed inside you until life forces it out. You don't realize how much faith you have until faith is all you can stand on. You don't know how deep your resilience is until the storm shows up. You don't discover the depth of your prayer life until your tears become your language before God. Breaking doesn't just reveal your wounds, it reveals your strengths. It uncovers the capacity God built in you that comfort was hiding. It brings out the warrior in you that you didn't know existed. In breaking seasons, God also removes illusions. Sometimes you think you're depending on God, but in reality, you're depending on the things you've built. You think your strength comes from your faith, but it actually came from your routine. You think your peace came from God, but it was actually coming from the people who surrounded you. You think your confidence is rooted in Him, but it was rooted in your accomplishments. So God begins to break the structures you unknowingly placed above Him, not to shame you, but to realign you, not to diminish you, but to deepen you. Breaking shatters the idols you didn't even realize you had. And while you're in the breaking, you feel exposed, you feel vulnerable. You feel like everyone else is thriving while you're barely holding on, but God doesn't break you publicly to embarrass you. He breaks you privately to rebuild you spiritually. The breaking is never for display, it's for construction. He isolates you not because you're forgotten, but because He's focused on you. When a potter breaks a vessel, he doesn't break it to discard it. He breaks it because he sees a flaw that must be corrected before the vessel can hold what it was designed for. God sees what you're meant to carry, and sometimes He must break what's flawed before He can fill what's destined. Your breaking season is also the birthplace of humility. You learn to surrender. You learn to release control. You learn that you cannot fix everything, understand everything, or manage everything. Breaking strips you of the illusion of self-sufficiency. It reminds you that you are the creation, not the creator. And ironically, once you stop fighting the breaking, you start experiencing the building. Once you stop resisting the process, you start seeing the purpose. Once you submit to God's hands, His strength begins to rise in the empty places. The most powerful testimonies are born out of breaking, not out of comfort, not out of predictability, not out of the seasons where everything is going right, but out of the nights you cried yourself to sleep and got up anyway, out of the days you felt forgotten but kept praying, out of the moments you questioned everything but held on to your faith. Breaking molds you. Breaking shapes you. Breaking matures you. Breaking strengthens you. And here's the beauty: God never breaks you without the intention to bless you. Every breaking in Scripture is followed by multiplication. Jesus broke the bread before He fed the multitude. The alabaster box was broken before the fragrance filled the room. Jacob was broken at the river before he became Israel. Breaking is not the end. It's the doorway. It's the transition point between who you were and who God is forming you to be. So if you are in a breaking season, don't misinterpret the moment. You are not cursed. You are being carved. You are not abandoned. You are being aligned. You are not losing. You are being lifted. God is not destroying you. He's developing you. The pressure you feel is the shaping of purpose. The tears you cry are watering the soil of your next season. The things that are falling apart are making space for what is being built. Breaking is not a sign that God is done with you. It's proof that He's just getting started. What feels like breaking is actually the sound of construction. God is building you into something stronger, wiser, deeper, and more grounded than you have ever been. Your breaking season is God's building season in disguise. And when you come out of this, you won't just be restored. You will be rebuilt stronger than before, wiser than before, more focused than before, more surrendered than before, and more aligned with God's purpose than you have ever been in your life. There are moments in life when something walks out, shuts down, or suddenly disappears, and your first instinct is to panic, to grieve, to question what went wrong. You replay conversations, analyze decisions, and try to understand how everything shifted so quickly. But what you don't recognize in that moment is that every exit in your life is actually an entrance to a higher dimension of purpose. God never allows something to leave without positioning you for something greater. Doors don't close to trap you, they close to transform you. And the sooner you realize that endings are disguised beginnings, the sooner you'll stop mourning what left and start preparing for what's coming. Life is filled with divine exits, moments when God interrupts your comfort to introduce your calling. You might think you're losing something valuable, but heaven sees a step you could never take unless that chapter was closed. God will sometimes push you out of a situation you would have stayed in forever. You would have stayed in the job that underpaid you. You would have stayed in the relationship that drained you. You would have stayed in the environment that diminished you. You would have stayed in the mindset that limited you. So God orchestrates an exit, not because he wants you to hurt, but because he wants you to grow. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being positioned. Every exit God allows serves a purpose that you cannot see in the moment. When Israel left Egypt, they thought it was escape, but it was elevation. When Joseph was thrown into the pit, it felt like rejection, but it was redirection. When Ruth left Moab, it seemed like loss, but it was preparation for destiny. When Jesus left the grave, it appeared like an end, but it was the ultimate beginning. Exits are never what they appear to be. In the natural, they look like loss. In the spiritual, they sound like promotion. God is intentional about how he moves you. He doesn't just pull you out, he pulls you up. He doesn't just shift your surroundings, he expands your capacity. And most importantly, he doesn't just remove you from a place, he aligns you with a purpose. Every exit carries an instruction, a direction, and an elevation. Something has to leave so something can live. Something has to close so something can open. Something has to shift so something can grow. Purpose always requires space, and exits create room for God to move. But here's the challenge. Exits rarely feel spiritual when you're in them. They feel painful. They feel sudden. They feel unfair. You might ask, why did they leave? Why did this end? Why did God allow this? But the truth is, God often removes you from what you thought you needed to bring you into what you truly needed. You think you're being torn away, but God is actually tearing down walls that would have limited your destiny. He is removing distractions, dismantling attachments, and dissolving connections that cannot accompany you into your next level. Some exits are gentle. Others are dramatic. Some end quietly, others end abruptly. But all of them are purposeful. God knows exactly what needs to stay and what needs to go in order to expand your life. The people who left were not equipped to walk where you're going. The opportunities that ended were too small for the capacity you're stepping into. The environments that rejected you were never your home. They were your training ground. God does not allow anything to exit your life that is required for your future. What's essential stays. What's temporary leaves. What's weakness breaks away. What's purpose remains. Your purpose requires clarity, and clarity often comes through separation. When things exit your life, your vision becomes sharper. You start seeing who was truly for you and who was attached to your comfort rather than your calling. You distinguish between those who walked with you and those who walked on you. You learn who was seasonal, who was toxic, and who was sent. Exits are God's way of detoxing your destiny. He removes what clouds your judgment. He clears what clutters your spirit. He extracts what tries to contaminate your calling. When God allows an exit, he is also exposing a new entrance. But the entrance is not always visible right away. Sometimes you stand in the hallway of transition, not where you were, but not yet where you're going. This hallway can feel like the most uncomfortable space. The door behind you is shut, but the door in front of you hasn't opened yet. You feel suspended, stretched, and unsure. But this hallway is holy ground. It is where God refines you. It is where he strengthens you. It is where he prepares you for the weight of the next season. What you call delay, God calls development. What you call uncertainty, God calls upgrade. What you call loss, God calls launch. You cannot cling to an exit and expect to embrace an entrance. You cannot mourn what's behind you and still move toward what's ahead. God wants to elevate you, but elevation requires release. You cannot rise while holding on to what was only designed for your past. Some people cannot breathe in the atmosphere of your purpose. Some relationships cannot survive the altitude of your next level. Some habits cannot endure the pressure of your destiny. God will strip away what cannot withstand the weight of your calling. Every exit carries a lesson. Some exits teach you who you are. Some teach you who you're not. Some teach you what you need. Others teach you what you must never accept again. Every exit sharpens you, strengthens you, and sanctifies you. God is not just taking you out of a place, He's taking certain things out of you: fear, insecurity, people-pleasing, self-doubt, small thinking, limited vision. These things exit your life when God is preparing you for purpose. You cannot carry those things into the next dimension of what God is doing. When you finally see the purpose behind the exit, you stop resisting the shift. You stop replaying the loss. You stop holding on to the door God has already closed. Instead, you begin to thank God for what left, because now you see it was making way for what's coming. You begin to appreciate the exit because it pushed you into a season you would have never chosen, but desperately needed. You begin to understand that if that person stayed, you would have never discovered your strength. If that job continued, you would have never stepped into your assignment. If that opportunity remained, you would have never expanded your capacity. You begin to see that every exit was actually God's mercy disguised as movement. So now, with spiritual maturity, you begin to welcome the exits. You say, God, if it's not your will, remove it. If it's not aligned, shift it. If it cannot carry me, release it. You trust that His exits are entrances. His endings are beginnings, His closings are transitions, and His guidance is always leading you higher. Every exit in your life is pointing you toward a higher dimension of purpose. You are not being emptied, you are being elevated. You are not being abandoned, you are being advanced. You are not being diminished, you are being destined. God is preparing you for a level that requires the space created by every exit that felt painful but was ultimately purposeful. You will look back and say, I didn't understand it then, but that exit saved my life. That exit shaped my calling. That exit revealed my identity. That exit pushed me into destiny. And when you walk through the entrance God has prepared, you'll realize it was worth every closed door, every loss, every shift, every ending, because the purpose waiting on the other side is greater than anything you had to leave behind. There comes a moment in every journey where you look back at what walked away, what fell apart, what disappointed you, and you begin to ask yourself, why? Why did this end? Why did they leave? Why did that door close? The human heart wants answers. It wants clarity. It wants closure. But what you must understand is that many of the exits you experienced were not rejection. They were redirection. God wasn't pushing you down. He was turning you around. He wasn't stripping you of value. He was steering you toward alignment. But the pain of the moment can blind you to the purpose of the movement. So you misread what God orchestrated. What you thought was a breaking was actually a blessing. What you believed was a setback was really a setup. What you interpreted as abandonment was God pulling you into divine alignment. Rejection is a powerful emotion because it touches the deepest longing of the human spirit to belong. So when someone leaves you, denies you, or dismisses you, you naturally assume you weren't enough, not good enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not worthy enough. But what if the rejection wasn't about you at all? What if the rejection was about the direction God needed to take you? What if the person who left was never meant to stand in the place God is calling you into? What if the opportunity that closed would have limited your future? What if what you called rejection was God saying, I love you too much to let you settle here. People rarely leave your life by accident. When something ends unexpectedly, your first instinct is to blame yourself. But heaven is not panicking. God knew they would leave long before you realized they couldn't stay. God understood that if you continued in that relationship, your identity would shrink. If you stayed in that environment, your spirit would suffocate. If you remained in that opportunity, your strength would stagnate. God redirected you because your future demanded more than your past could provide. He saw what you couldn't see, heard what you couldn't hear, and knew what you didn't know. Divine alignment is uncomfortable because it pulls you away from what is familiar. It takes you away from what has history. It separates you from what you thought was permanent. But the truth is, not everything that starts with you is ordained to stay with you. Some people were assigned to your journey, not your destination. Some opportunities were meant to teach you, not keep you. Some seasons were designed to shape you, not sustain you. So God redirects you. He closes doors you would have forced open. He removes people you would have held on to. He ends chapters you would have rewritten. He does whatever is necessary to ensure you arrive where He destined you to be. And here's the thing, divine alignment often looks like divine disruption. God shakes what you're standing on so you can shift where you're standing. He makes the ground uncomfortable so you stop planting yourself in places that cannot produce your future. So the job ends, the friendship dies, the relationship collapses, the plan fails, and you think you are losing, but you are being led. You think you are falling, but you are being forwarded. You think you are rejected, but you are being redirected. God is not taking something from you. He's taking you somewhere. When God aligns you, He doesn't just change your surroundings. He changes your direction. He realigns your desires. He repositions your spirit. He resets your vision. He recalibrates your steps. Divine alignment means you are no longer driven by what you want, but by what He wills. And sometimes His will interrupts your comfort. Sometimes His will dismantles your expectations. Sometimes His will offends your assumptions. But when all the pieces fall into place, you realize God saw what you couldn't see. He protected you from relationships that would have destroyed you. He blocked opportunities that would have distracted you. He shut down paths that would have derailed you. The enemy wants you to interpret redirection as rejection, so you will stay stuck in regret. He wants you replaying what went wrong. He wants you blaming yourself for what ended. He wants you mourning what God moved. Because as long as you see God's guidance as punishment, you will resist His process. But once you understand that God's no is just as loving as His yes, you begin to trust the way He redirects. You begin to see that every time God pulled you out of something, He was pulling you closer to something better. You begin to realize that rejection wasn't the enemy winning, it was God intervening. When you are in divine alignment, everything that is not for you naturally falls away. You no longer have to beg for people to stay. You no longer have to convince someone of your worth. You no longer have to manipulate circumstances to keep a door open. What is aligned with your purpose will remain. What is not aligned will refuse to stay. And that is the beauty of divine alignment. It filters your life without your permission. It removes what cannot walk with you. It exposes what cannot handle you. It eliminates what cannot carry you. Alignment brings clarity. When you look back on the seasons you thought were rejection, you begin to see the fingerprints of God all over them. You realize that if that person stayed, you wouldn't have discovered your strength. If that job continued, you wouldn't have awakened your calling. If that opportunity succeeded, you would have never found your true identity. You begin to understand that what ended wasn't meant to be permanent, it was meant to be preparation. God was not shutting you out. He was setting you up. You were not rejected. You were redirected. And that redirection saved you. It guided you. It stretched you. It humbled you. It healed you. It pulled you into a deeper level of trust, a stronger level of faith, and a higher level of purpose. God was aligning you with the people who would uplift you, not drain you. He was aligning you with opportunities that would elevate you, not confine you. He was aligning you with environments that would grow you, not shrink you. Sometimes the best thing God can do for you is remove what you thought you needed. Sometimes His greatest gift is a closed door. Sometimes His greatest protection is a no, because the people and places you were chasing could not carry the weight of who you are becoming. They could not withstand the glory resting on your future. They could not handle the version of you God is developing. So He redirected you not away from purpose, but into purpose. When you finally embrace divine alignment, you stop explaining your exits and start expecting God's entrance. You stop apologizing for what fell apart and start anticipating what is being built. You stop trying to resurrect what God removed and start celebrating what God revealed. You walk with confidence knowing that nothing can leave your life unless God has decreed it is no longer needed. And nothing can stay unless it is connected to your destiny. You were not rejected, you were redirected into divine alignment. And when the fullness of that alignment manifests, when God finishes what He started, you will realize that everything you lost was making room for everything you were meant to gain. You will walk into a season that fits you in ways your past never could. You will rise into a purpose that honors the pain you survived. You will step into destiny and say, Lord, thank you for every door you closed, every person you removed, every path you blocked because it led me here. There are moments in life when something leaves, something you depended on, something you trusted, something you believed would always be there, and the first thing you feel is the sting of loss. You feel abandoned, you feel empty, you feel disoriented, and in that moment, it's hard to see anything good coming from what you lost. But what you must understand is that God never allows subtraction without preparing for multiplication. What you lost was not meant to break you. It was meant to build you. The absence you feel is actually the foundation for the strength you're about to walk in. What you lost prepared the ground for what God is about to grow. What left your hands created room for what God is about to place into them. And the tears you shed over what walked away are watering the soil of your next season. Loss in God's economy is never loss. It is divine preparation. God is strategic. He does not waste pain. He does not waste endings. He does not waste departures. Every loss has a purpose, and every purpose has a promise attached to it. But when you are in the middle of the storm, you don't feel the promise, you feel the pressure, you don't feel the strength, you feel the struggle, and you begin to assume that what left you weakened you. But God says, no. What left was making room for what's coming. What left exposed what needed to grow. What left uncovered the strength you didn't know you had. Sometimes God will allow things to be removed not because they were bad, but because they were too small for where He's taking you. You were trying to build a skyscraper with materials meant for a cottage. You were trying to carry a destiny with supports designed only for a season. So God removed what couldn't handle your future. He cleared out what would have collapsed under the weight of your calling. He stripped away what was insufficient so He could replace it with what is unshakable. What you lost made space for a stronger version of you to emerge. The pain made you wiser. The disappointment made you deeper. The tears made you more compassionate. The betrayal made you more discerning. The brokenness made you more surrendered. Every loss brought something with it, even if you didn't recognize it at the time. The strength you have now came from the nights you didn't know how you would make it. The clarity you walk with now came from the confusion that once surrounded you. The resilience you carry now came from the seasons that tried to destroy you. Nothing was wasted. Sometimes loss comes disguised as devastation, but heaven sees it as construction. God sometimes has to break the old shell so the new strength can emerge. Think of a butterfly. It looks like the caterpillar is dying when the cocoon forms. Everything about its old identity dissolves. It loses form. It loses what was familiar. It loses what made sense. But inside that cocoon, strength is forming. Wings are growing. Capacity is increasing. What looked like loss was actually transformation. In the same way, you had to lose what was familiar for God to build what is extraordinary. You had to lose what was safe for God to create what is strong. What walked away from you was not robbing you, it was revealing you. It revealed your dependence on God. It revealed the fight inside you. It revealed the faith you didn't know you had. It revealed that you can survive what you thought would destroy you. It revealed that the power of God in your life is greater than the pain in your past. Loss does not weaken purpose. It strengthens it. Loss purifies your motives. Loss purges your circle. Loss stabilizes your foundation. Loss removes what can't handle your future, so what remains can carry the weight of your destiny. God sometimes allows loss because you were leaning too heavily on things that were never meant to hold you. You were trusting people more than God. You were relying on routines instead of revelation. You were building your worth on things that could be taken. So God allows certain things to fall away so that your faith becomes anchored in Him alone, not in applause, not in approval, not in position, not in possessions, but in His presence. And when your faith is anchored in God, you become unshakable. That's the strength God is building in you. What you lost also taught you sensitivity. It made you more aware of the people around you. It made you empathetic. It made you gentle. It made you seek God instead of seeking validation. It made you grow instead of settling. It made you fight for purpose instead of clinging to comfort. It made you pray prayers you never prayed before. It pushed you into intimacy with God that comfort never would have produced. Loss did not limit you. It launched you. You will begin to realize that some of what you lost had become a weight. It was slowing you down. It was draining your spirit. It was cluttering your vision. It was dulling your discernment. It was lowering your standards. But because you were attached to it, you didn't recognize its impact. So God, in His mercy, removed it. He took away what you did not have the strength to release. And even though it hurt, it freed you. It liberated you to grow. It liberated you to rise. It liberated you to evolve into the version of yourself you were always meant to be. Loss also produces clarity, sharp, undeniable clarity. Suddenly you see who was really for you. You see what mattered. You see what was draining you. You see what you were settling for. You see what you allowed out of fear. You begin to realize that if you had kept everything you wanted, you would not have become the person you needed to be. Loss rearranges your priorities. It matures your spirit. It shapes your identity. It forces you to confront truth, and truth always produces strength. And here is the beautiful twist. What you lost was not greater than what you're about to gain. The strength God is building in you is far more valuable than what left. The wisdom God deposited in you is more powerful than what walked away. The maturity He produced in you is more impactful than what you thought you needed. You will rise from this not weaker, but wiser, not broken, but built, not fragile, but fortified, not limited, but liberated. What left your life was the pruning. What's coming is the harvest. What fell away was the old season. What's arriving is the new strength. What walked out was the weight. What's being built is the warrior. You are stepping into a level of strength, clarity, and purpose that could have only come through loss. You didn't know it then, but the loss was the preparation. The loss was the classroom. The loss was the training ground. God is rebuilding you stronger than before. Stronger in faith, stronger in discernment, stronger in courage, stronger in identity, stronger in purpose, stronger in spirit. And when you step into the fullness of what God is preparing, you will look back and say, what I lost was not loss. It was the beginning of my strength. As we come to the conclusion of this message, I want you to breathe for a moment and recognize what God has been doing inside you while you've been listening. You didn't just sit through words, you sat through a spiritual construction site. God has been lifting beams, laying foundations, uprooting what was weak and reinforcing what is strong. Every pain you remembered, every loss you revisited, every season you thought broke you, God has been using it, shaping it, redefining it. You are not leaving this moment the same way you entered it. Something in you has shifted. Something in you has awakened. Something in you has stood up, because at the heart of it all, here is the truth. What left your life was never meant to stay. If it could not honor your future, if it could not carry your calling, if it could not withstand the pressure of your promise, God allowed it to move so you could grow. God allowed it to break so you could build again. God allowed it to walk away so you could walk forward. That may not have felt holy when it happened. It may not have felt divine. It may not have felt like destiny. But looking back now, you can see the fingerprints of God all over the very thing that tried to destroy you. You survived what should have crushed you. You kept breathing when grief tried to suffocate you. You kept walking when your heart was limping. You kept hoping when everything around you felt like darkness. And God didn't let you crumble. He carried you. He covered you. He kept you. He preserved you for a version of yourself you hadn't even met yet. Now that version is emerging. Now that version is rising. Now that version is stepping into the light. Everything you lost was making room. Room for better connections. Room for deeper purpose. Room for clarity. Room for strength. Room for maturity. Room for God's fingerprints to be visible in ways they never were before. You are not empty. You've been cleared. You are not abandoned. You're being aligned. You are not broken. You're being rebuilt. That's why some relationships fell apart. That's why some opportunities collapsed. That's why some seasons suddenly ended without warning. God wasn't subtracting. He was preparing the ground for construction. He was digging into the soil of your soul to make space for the foundation of your next dimension. And let me tell you something, the next version of your life cannot be built on the old framework. The next level of your calling requires a stronger structure. The next level of your destiny demands a wiser, tougher, more resilient you. You are stepping into a season where God is not only restoring you, but reinforcing you. He's tightening the bolts of your character. He's securing the beams of your faith. He's strengthening the walls of your identity. You are becoming unshakable, untouchable, unbreakable, because now you know the truth. If God allowed something to leave, it was because He saw what you couldn't. He knew what it would do to your future. He knew what it would cost your peace. He knew how it would drain your purpose. So instead of mourning what walked away, start praising God for what is on the way. Instead of asking, why did they leave? Start declaring, thank God they did. Instead of holding on to the ashes, open your hands to the blueprint God has already drawn. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. You're not being weakened. You're being reforged. You're not being reduced. You're being refined. And now, right now, your spirit is waking up to the realization that God never abandoned you in the breaking. He was closest when you were hurting. He was working when you were weeping. He was opening doors while you were closing chapters. This entire journey was not a detour. It was the design. So lift your head, square your shoulders, take a deep breath. Your story is not ending, it's evolving. Your strength is not fading, it's forming. Your future is not uncertain. It is unfolding under the careful hand of the God who rebuilds, restores, and resurrects. Walk out of this moment knowing this. You are stronger than what left you. You are stronger than what hurt you. You are stronger than what almost broke you. And God is not done building. The best version of you has not even been revealed yet. The strongest version of you has not even stepped forward yet. The most powerful chapter of your life is still in God's hands, and He is not finished. So go forward with boldness. Walk forward with confidence. Step forward with faith. Because what left your life was never meant to stay, and God is rebuilding you stronger than you have ever been.